opinion, Jake. The tribe has spoken.
Fuck you, Kevin.
Aw, fuck you too, sweetie.
I'm JJ, one of the original Tribe of Nerds members. You can catch me on Marvel, Pokemon, and other gaming podcasts.
What up? It's Josh, resident superhero nerd, but I also dabble in the occasional super villain as well.
Some may know me as the Chaos Gremlin, but really I'm just Joe King.
Pikachu, use Volt Tackle! Good job, Pikachu!
On the Tribe of Nerds.
Still looks damn good for a 20-year-old show, doesn't it?
You all, everybody! You all, everybody!
So that's the first episode. It's pretty solid. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds, our first podcast of 2025, and what an exciting one it is because we are covering Lost. My first viewing of Lost, and of course Michael, Kristin, and Gregg are here. They are super fans of Lost. So I guess to get into it, also there will be a spoiler review at the end, so these three will talk amongst each other about spoilers for all the super fans out there, so you can tune in after. There will be a spoiler warning. With that, let's get into it now. So how did you three each get into Lost? This is a show that came out 20 years ago, so what have your journeys been with this show?
Well, I'm older than I look, so I remember I remember it starting, and this is probably my 108th watch of the show. So I remember there was a trailer for Lost in the UK. I think it was a UK specific trailer of all the cast dancing on the beach with like their makeup running down their faces and like ripped suit jackets and stuff like that. And it looked terrible. It was like the worst trailer I've ever seen. I was like, I have no interest in watching this thing. And my nana gave me and my mum a call and said like, oh, this show Lost is starting tonight. You need to watch it. Apparently it's brilliant. Apparently I think it had already started in the US. So yeah, we sat down and watched the pilot on launch night here in the UK. And it was just, there has never been a show before or since that has just grabbed me like Lost did and continued to. It was like obsessed from then on.
Yeah, that's amazing. That a show can just grab you like that, and certainly have experienced that with like Survivor and stuff for myself. But Kristin, what about you?
Yeah, so there was I don't know, I don't remember that trailer, but definitely it's probably UK. But I do remember there being and it wasn't much. Like I was like, okay, that it seems interesting. It was something enough to be like, this could be an interesting show, but it was a horrible trailer too. Like I remember being like, they didn't give us like really anything like most trailers do. And I remember like sitting, like talking to my dad and my stepmom, and I'm like, we were all kind of like intrigued by it. So we're like, we're all going to watch this together as a family. And I remember sitting down for the first episode and just kind of like what Michael said, being just, I mean, engrossed, like right at the beginning. It's so funny because my stepmom was like, not for me, I'm out like after this. But my dad and I kept watching, it's like one of those things that I feel like if you're into Lost, you're going to be into Lost, but there are people out there that it's not the audience for. And like my stepmom, she was done, I think like 10 minutes in, she like started doing stuff in the kitchen. She was over it. So but yeah, no, literally day one since it like aired. So
Yeah, that's incredible. Gregg, what about you?
I wasn't a day one person. I had actually found out about it through my cousin who rented it on Netflix when Netflix was still DVDs in the mail. And I had watched like a part of an episode and I kind of put it in the back of my mind that I wanted to watch it. And then in college, I got it on Hulu and me and my roommate watched it straight through. And we kind of just sat there afterwards and we're like, we're gonna need to watch that again.
I love that you and Michael threw things in there, and Jake's like, "Great."
You'll get it eventually. So the series had already finished when you watched it?
Oh yeah, I didn't watch it till 2014.
Oh wow.
You had the luxury of not having to wait a week and then in between seasons waiting forever. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
On that point, I just like to say it like that's a luxury and also kind of a shame as well because what was so much fun about Lost was it was really the first show of its kind where on like online and social media and discussion and message boards really blew up at this time, and everyone was online discussing Lost and discussing series, like slowing stuff down, trying to pick stuff apart and find clues and answers in there, and it became this real like show for the fans to discuss weekly. And I love that every week just being obsessed with the message boards and trying to find out not spoilers but clues of stuff that was being discussed.
Well, and I think oh, sorry, Greg, go ahead.
I was going to say that's the great thing about Lost. 20 years later, and those message boards are still going strong, and
Yeah.
they're still dealing or talking about it left and right.
Yeah, and I think like Michael, you and I've talked about this too, is that it's great because you got to talk to these people and you're giving them your opinion and they're like, that's not what I thought at all. I think that, and so it's great to see everybody's different interpretation of Lost, which is what I think also makes Lost such an incredible show, is that everybody's going to view Lost completely differently.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to experience this for the first time. I'll give my thoughts on these first two episodes, which we will be covering for this first episode, the pilots. So Kristin is going to go through the synopsis and we'll kind of discuss as we go. So we'll start with episode 1 first. So Kristin, take it away.
Yeah, so I mean, we really open up. It's kind of a brilliant opening in how to start a show is just right away. There's a guy and his eyes popping open and you see, you know what I mean? There's just a lot of detail and you're like, okay, what's about to happen? Like you kind of are invested right there, like we've talked about. So Jack, we are introduced to Jack. We don't know his name for a few more minutes here, but we are introduced to Jack. He kind of reevaluates what's going on, getting himself, right. And then he runs out of the jungle and onto a beach. And of course, then chaos ensues. He's looking around at this massive plane crash. He's kind of looking at all these different scenarios and things that are happening. We see, a guy with his leg trapped. He's having people help him get this guy out. We see Claire, who we now, will, get into all these characters because now we're starting to piece people together. She's pregnant on the beach. You've got, Boone over here with with not doing what he's supposed to be doing, but think he's helping a lady on the beach. So there's just a lot of things that are going on. So let's kind of jump right into where like those first couple minutes where Jack is kind of all craziness before we get into like the next part. So Jake, what were your first thoughts going into seeing just like all of this stuff happening and all these people like every which way going up and down?
Yeah, so immediately we talked about this in between episodes, but I love just the opening shot and you see Jack's people dilate and just like the detail, as you just mentioned, Kristin, was incredible. I mean, there's shows that don't do that. Like uh they won't give that much detail, and so that was really, really cool to see. And then just like you can feel the emotions of someone running out and like seeing all the chaos of like a plane crash and like everybody's in disarray and the plane, what's left of the plane is like still like blowing up, and so lots of craziness, and like I feel like it captures what this would be like in a real life situation.
Yeah, we talked about this the show being 20 years old, and you wouldn't guess it from looking at it. This was the most expensive TV pilot ever made and held that record for a very long time. It cost $14 million just for the pilot episode. And you can see where they spent their money. imagery of the plane broken up on the beach, all like practical effects, and also they shot on location in Hawaii. It really gives the island this, you don't have to look for the holes in CG or stuff like that. Maybe you will occasionally, but having it all shot out there and practically done, it's one of those shows that will be timeless whenever you watch it, whether it's now or in 50 years time.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't notice any like CGI holes because a lot of it did look practical. So like anything that was CGI didn't look bad to me at all. So
Yeah. Greg, anything on kind of this opening moment?
I just liked how like it grasped me because it was so serene at the very beginning, where he's just laying there, and then the dog shows up, and then you're kind of like, "What the hell is going on?" And then pops out on a beach full of people getting burned up and cut up.
I think too, it's also like again the everything is in the details. Like even as Jack's running out of the jungle, there's a shoe in a tree. Like they took like the time to really make this look like a plane crash. You know what I mean? Like there were just the attention to details was unmatched for sure. So then kind of jumping in, we're getting more, talking more. Kate obviously stumbles upon Jack, sews him up. He tells her the story of him, being a doctor. So now we understand why Jack is able to help all these people. I kind of skipped over Michael's favorite part of Boone being irrelevant, trying to find a pen, but like to help this lady.
Just running around looking for pens. It's like when you give a kid like something to do just to get them out of your way. It's just so funny. Jack's running around saving lives, and Boone's like, "I'm a lifeguard." It's like you should see if you consider giving that license back. Just go find pens. You're useless.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, so it kind of, you don't know that Jack is this doctor at first. So you're just like, is this dude just like this, jumping in to help people and everybody else is in shock? Like, so it's kind of fun to start to get these backstories of these people, So Kate's coming in, she, her and Jack have now made this bond because she sewed him up. And so that's when they start talking about he blacked out on the plane. She said, I was awake for it all. The tail's gone, flew off, the cockpit or the front of the plane flew off. And then now Jack's talking to her about, we need to go and find this. And so now we're leading up into going into the jungle here. Where we see, Charlie's now a part of this, and they're kind of bringing in Charlie. Well, Charlie brings himself into it, I guess.
I was gonna say.
I guess I should say that. Good old Charlie. But this is going into that, like them going to find the cockpit. So Jake, what were your reactions to kind of hearing about the plane breaking off and all these different things? What were your reactions going into this next scene?
I think the mystery just further deepens of like what actually happened, and slowly as we uncovered through these pilot episodes, even just like a couple things get answered of what was happening with certain characters. And we got to see a little bit of what happened to the plane. Not obviously not completely, but I wouldn't expect that in the first two episodes. So, yeah, no, I thought it was really cool. And then just like, yeah, getting introduced to our trio, I guess, that we're gonna be following. I mean, obviously, I'm assuming we're gonna get to know more of the characters, even more, but just seems like this is the trio that we'll be following for a bit, at least my impression. And Evangeline Lilly, I mean, I know this was like what her first like job in her career, but my introduction to her was in the MCU or Marvel Cinematic Universe with Ant-Man, where she was the Wasp. So that's where I know her from. So it's interesting seeing her 10 years before that even happened. So
yeah, and I know I've been that before, but like on for the podcast's sake, Evangeline and Lilly, they were so enthralled with her that they filmed a bunch of things and were like, we'll add her in later.
Wow. That's so wild to me. I know like some other shows I think that have done something like that where they'll like even animated stuff where they'll have like a different voice actor or actress, and then they'll like edit in like who they actually end up using later. And so that's just very hard to believe, because I mean she fits in great. I feel like I saw the most range from her in the first two episodes that I've ever seen her in her career. So that was cool. Yeah. Evangeline Lilly was pretty solid.
Yeah, and I specifically left this part off because and Michael's probably like, "Oh my God, you're forgetting like kind of a key element here." I did not. I did this on purpose. I wanted to kind of get Jake, but there is a massive moment that happens. It's starting to like set this up is they're at nighttime and all of a sudden we're hearing noises and crunching and trees are moving and things like that. So your first takeaway of what you think this might be, Jake, go for it.
Well, I heard that and I'm like, okay, so there's some sort of creatures or something out there. And I think that's where I started thinking, okay, is this going to be sort of like Cabin in the Woods, in terms of there's going to be monsters out there? Maybe this is some sort of experiment, maybe not like completely a simulation type thing like in that movie, but I feel like this stuff has been set up for these people to crash land here and like they weren't just this didn't just happen by chance.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
much.
Mike, what were your guys' first reactions seeing Lost and seeing this like we don't know what it is?
You know what's funny is like hearing 20 years later the same theories that we were all having in 2004, and whether or not Jake's on the right track or not, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think I thought dinosaur. I was a big Jurassic Park fan. I was like, oh my God, a dinosaur show. This is like my greatest thing ever. It's hard to remember exactly what you thought at the time, but yeah, I think I was along the same lines as Jake when I watched the pilot.
I
Greg?
thought I thought it was going to be something like a Godzilla kind of monster.
Yeah. It's so funny that you brought up like the Jurassic Park of it all, Michael, because that's like literally where my brain went sitting there watching with my dad. I'm like, oh my gosh, is it gonna be like a T-Rex coming out of here? What's happening? Like it was just like one of those, that's where I went to. But of course we don't see, all we see is the trees moving, we hear noises, weird, mechanical clickings and all kinds of random noises. So that is kind of their first night on the island. So of course we wake up the next day. And the trek to find the cockpit starts because they need to find the transceiver because no one's coming yet. So walk me through, Jake. They arrive to the cockpit. They get into the cockpit. They find the transceiver. They find the pilot. Walk me through kind of your feelings as they got in here.
Well, first off, we got the introduction of Charlie, as you mentioned earlier, and what a
Resident
character.
The Brit.
Yeah, but what a character. I mean, immediately the singing and just like, I
You
mean,
love everybody.
yeah, I mean, I think it just sets the tone for who this character is immediately, especially compared to Jack and Kate, who are, you know, taking this more seriously. Um, but yeah, so as soon as they got to the cockpit and like you have like the pilot is still there, and I'm like, I feel like the pilot is probably just gonna die shortly after like giving them something or whatever. But like I also thought, okay, maybe he's gonna die because, injuries and whatnot. I mean, but no, he gets taken by some sort of creature and murdered and skinned so that he has no skin left. Um, so I found that very interesting and curious what this means.
Yeah, I mean, this is the part where we're getting a little bit more of what this thing could possibly be because it's taking people out of, like, you don't even see it, it just like sucks them out, and now it's like a brutal killing and things like that, and it's kind of where it was right behind me, but we still aren't seeing anything, and so it's really great for us as viewers to really keep us intrigued to be like, what did I see part of it? Like, you know what I mean? Like you're like analyzing your screen, like, let me pause it in this right part, like maybe I can see it or things like that. So I like that it was kind of still a mystery, but they're giving us a little bit more.
The cinematography for those scenes is just phenomenal because you see everything moving at such a fast pace. You don't see anything, but you see everything in your mind, you think. It's just so great.
Yeah.
And that fear of something monstrous chasing you and not wanting to look behind. Also, we do have several other characters say that they didn't see the monster. So it's like they don't know either. So we're all kind of in the dark of what this thing is. I feel like Jack could have had a sneaky look, but apparently he didn't see it.
I do have to throw this fun fact out, and I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that my fellow Losty fans over here know this, but Jake would not know this. So Matthew Fox, who plays Jack, he did not want to get into another like full-on show. He did not want to dive into getting and having, the commitment of that. So he was actually supposed to die where the pilot dies. That was supposed to be Jack. And Jack was going to be done. He was not a main character. And he read the pilot and read the script, and he's like, I'm in. And so he decided to stay on as a full character. So that was a fun fact for Losties.
Wow.
And Jack and Jake, I just called you Jack like the Survivor.
Yes.
Sorry.
You're Jack now.
The person who was originally penciled in to play Jack in the pilot was Michael Keaton in the original draft, where Jack dies very early.
Really?
So that would have been a very different show, I think.
Yeah. I don't know that Michael Keaton stays on for this long, like that long.
No.
Yeah. So, obviously, so now they're coming back. They come back to just absolute fighting, and chaos is ensuing on the beach here. We're starting to see more characters come out. And they're like, okay, we found it, but we need this, we got to fix this receiver and things like that. So, we're kind of diving more into finding out. We've got two guys fighting, claiming one's taking down the plane, the other one's yelling, and you're a criminal, all these things. So go into this next scene, Jake, of where you're seeing new characters come in, their stories, what you're kind of diving into as Jake. See, I said Jake instead of Jack. As Jack and Kate and Charlie come back. We're gonna be fine. This isn't gonna happen all season. It's fine.
Yeah, so the two characters that are fighting, it's Sahid is one of them, and then the other guy, the blonde dude, I didn't catch his name.
I don't think you got his name.
Okay. So
it can remain a mystery.
Well, I mean, I know the name.
I know his name. Yeah.
Find that out later. Okay. I'll wait. Okay, so blonde dude, so clearly, I mean, this character is pretty unlikable at this point. I mean, at one stage, I think I had the reaction because he says something not great about Sahid.
Yeah.
Which at the time, obviously, this is in 2004. This is only a few years after 9/11 as well. So clearly, part of the times, unfortunately. And so, yeah, we're very clearly not meant to like this guy. So.
Yeah, he has some funny lines, but it's really unpleasant, some of the things that he says to say. And it's I think it's a good time to talk about it as well, that this cast, it's such a large cast, but it's also a pioneering show in many ways because of the diversity of the cast. And
right.
This show is about, I don't know if they mentioned it, maybe this is spoilery, but it's an international flight. I can't remember if they said that. So of course there's going to be people from all different places on this international flight. It wouldn't just be, white Americans on this plane. So, there's two characters that speak subtitled Korean in 2004 on a network television show. You have an Iraqi, he was in the Republican Guard. This is a year or two after the invasion of Iraq. So it's a very bold show. And a funny story, I'm in like Lost groups, and a guy was talking about some new woke show, and he was saying like, they don't make shows like Lost anymore, everything's woke now. I was like, you don't think Lost was woke? If Lost came out today, you wouldn't like it because of its wokeness. It was absolutely a pioneer in that way, and this amazing cast is strengthened because of all these different cultures and people coming together.
Yeah, I don't understand the term woke at all.
No.
So I just feel like people use it to make excuses for wanting to say really bad things. So
Yeah, no, I agree. So the other main thing that we see in the pilot here in the first episode is we are now getting what you will see throughout the show are flashbacks. And so we get to see Jack on the plane. It's kind of we find out very early on when he first gets up, he pulled out, alcohol from his jacket. You're like, what the heck's going on? Come to find out, he's had, talked with the stewardess. She gave him extra alcohol. He's talked with the woman that he saves on the beach. So now you're starting to see kind of there's a little bit of connection. He is pushed out of the way by somebody. They're chasing people down. So we're kind of getting a little bit pieces and little clips of this plane before it crashes. Oh my gosh, this is not going to happen. We cannot make this happen. We're going to get this fine. Jake, walk me through Jack and what you saw on the plane. Did you feel like there were any clues in there? Do you feel like this is leading to anything? What did you think about the flashback?
Well, I think it's a cool way to tell the story. I mean, you can jump everybody right into what's going on and then flash back to things later on that made sense. I mean, we saw the bottle of alcohol immediately that Jack had that when he gets up. So to like get context for how he got that little bottle of alcohol, was really cool to see, and we're gonna see a couple more flashbacks in episode 2 that are really really nice. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing how this show pays off things immediately.
Yeah, for sure. Michael, Greg, what were your thoughts going into watching the show and then all of a sudden we're getting flashbacks?
Greg?
I don't know.
I remember I think it's a really clever way to like frame the storytelling. Like The Walking Dead does something quite similar where it's like it gets you into the action straight away. And I always hate in things where like we knew going in that this was going to be a plane crash drama on a crazy island. Well, we knew it was going to be on an island. So the fact that they just throw you straight into that and they're able to tell you about these characters through the flashback framing device. Not too spoilery, Jake, but that's something we'll see continuing.
Yeah.
As we learn about these characters. Not all stay on the plane. But yeah, I think it's a good way to drip feed these stories, and then we'll see when we get into the prisoner stuff later on that they really use those flashbacks really cleverly to pull the rug from under you with that reveal. So yeah, they're really good.
Yeah. Go ahead, Greg.
I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to spoil anything, but yeah, I didn't know how to say what he just said, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, so I'm one of those people. I watching this live. I mean, I can appreciate it now, but watching this live, that's a huge pet peeve for me because I hate when things get broken up like that. I'm like, let's just kind of keep the flow going. And so when I watched this, live for the first time, I know that I was kind of annoyed at first, especially these first couple episodes. But then, like as you get deeper in and you're seeing why those are there, I didn't hate it as much anymore. But I am one of those people that watching these first, 2 episodes, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't care. Like, what's happening on the island? Like, I was, so it does to your point, Michael, where, Jake will get kind of more in depth, especially with these flashbacks, that they do kind of serve a purpose. But I know for me, at first, I was kind of annoyed.
Yeah, the meat of the story is the island for sure. It's like a nice added extra, but the island's where we want to be.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we kind of ended. I mean, I kind of put it in there. I realized we probably should have broken up. So it's for the pilot. It's 1 episode to me, even though it's 2 parts. So I kind of started diving in, but I realized I probably should have said, okay, let's stop here for a second before we move on. So I know, Jake, we were talking about doing like your top, since we don't know so many characters right now, who's your top favorite character just that first, but while the pilot dies, that's the end of part 1. Who's your favorite character? Who's your least favorite character so far?
Charlie's probably my favorite. I'm big into someone who's entertaining, even on Survivor, especially. If I'm entertained, then I like that person as a character. And so I'm probably easily going to be entertained by someone like Charlie who serves that.
Do you recognize Charlie?
Oh, I feel like I should. I
You
feel
should.
like
Definitely should.
He's in another huge franchise.
I mean, I
Might
feel
or
like I
may or may
should.
not be a trilogy.
He's a very merry guy.
Very merry.
Oh, geez. Okay, once you say it, I'm gonna be like, oh, okay.
I just did.
My
You
mind's
did.
blanking.
He's merry in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, sorry. I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan, so that's probably why.
We'll do that next.
Right. Right. What's happening here? Okay. All
Yeah.
right. But yeah, so Charlie is easily a great like pick for favorite character. I know that he was my favorite instantly right off the bat. I don't know about Michael or Greg.
I mean, yeah. I could relate to
Obviously.
Charlie. Yeah. I was like, oh, there's a British guy.
It's a British guy.
I'm gonna have an unpopular opinion. As soon as I saw the blonde hair guy, as you put it, I was like, that dude's a badass. Like, he's gonna be cool as shit. And yeah,
I mean, he does
Yeah,
some
sure.
badass stuff in episode 2. I won't deny that.
Like we're skipping ahead here. Episode 2 is where blonde-haired guy.
no, he pops up in the first one, smoking a cigarette, walking down the beach.
I know. I mean, I knew that there was going to be something, but like just once we get into all of just the savagery that he is in the second part is where he kind of rose to the top for me. Is there any
He's a
character?
dick, but he's an entertaining dick.
Yes, very entertaining. Jake, were there any characters that you were like, you know what, I could care less, or I'm not fond of this person right now?
I couldn't say anybody that I disliked after just the first part. I mean, I guess maybe like the Asian dude with his wife, just because I feel like he's kind of dismissive of his wife a little bit. So I feel like that's kind of maybe where I would lean, but I don't like actively dislike anybody. So
I can very poignantly point to one that I was so over just in the first a part of it is Shannon. I cannot.
oh yeah.
The complaining, the bitching. I cannot. I'm like, girl, people are dead. You are stuck on an island.
Mhm.
Shut up. Quit painting your toenails.
Yeah.
Being stupid. I could not stand Shannon right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she's just kind of like complaining. She's kind of like the younger version of a Karen. Like that's the best description for her. And like she does have some use when it gets to the end of the second episode at least, but
Yes, we'll get there too. Michael, Greg.
Mine was, I don't know if they've said his name yet. I'm just gonna say it, Michael. I did not like him. He treated his son like a dick, and like your kid just went through a trauma. Like you got to give him a little bit of lax. Like
Yeah.
he's gonna walk off looking for his dog. He's scared shitless.
Michael.
Yeah, I think I mean, do we need to keep names secret? I don't know if it matters too much,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Korean guy. Yeah, he's very kind of uncomfortable to watch and and very controlling of his wife. I would like to say one positive thing about him though that I think goes under the radar. Like he's a dick. He prepares food for everyone, and people just laugh in his face. I felt so bad for him. Like when he tries to offer Hurley the fish, and he's just like, no, dude, it's a funny moment, but like at least he is trying to. I don't know. It felt like a very odd moment for what we've seen of him up to this point to also be looking out for people in that way.
Yeah. No, for sure. So again, it's so hard because it is one episode for all of us. So jumping right into part 2, we've already mentioned some things that were there. Walt's looking off, going off looking for his dog. We see kind of that interaction between him and Michael, father son there. We see Jin and Sun, the Koreans, they're having their issues, but he's getting stuff handy. You know what I mean? Now, Jack and Kate and Charlie are coming back. So now we're starting to get more into seeing these people, but still not getting their stuff. But also where I'm sure Jake loved is we got the flashback of Charlie.
Yeah.
On the and there was kind of a big a big, huge eruption of what Charlie was doing in the bathroom in part 1. And Jake, what were your thoughts going to finally realizing who Charlie is?
Yeah, that he does drugs, and so he was going in the bathroom to get his daily dosage. Was pretty interesting, and it makes sense. I think Michael said it when we were watching, was like, yeah, he's in a band. I mean, that's kind of like par for the course for people in bands. And so, and then like we obviously saw him like to get to the bathroom in on the plane, he runs past Jack, and that's what we saw in part 1. So that was again a pretty cool payoff to something. So I found that interesting. We got to know a little bit more about Charlie, and yeah, I enjoyed yet another flashback.
And
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an interesting thing for you to watch because, I mean, it doesn't look like he has a great deal of supply in his shoe. So it could be a rough time for Charlie if he's that desperate for a fix.
Yeah.
Well, also I think this is easily missed by a lot of people because it does look like he just goes into the bathroom to get his daily fix, but that's not the case. He actually retrieved his drugs from that bathroom because he, as we saw in his flashback, he had dropped them into the toilet right before the plane starts going crazy. So he didn't have those drugs for that first night. When he went out with them to get to the cockpit is when he recovered those. So that was why he was technically in the bathroom. But yeah.
Yeah, he didn't care about the transceiver. He wanted it.
He's like, oh, I'm going for the cockpit. Let's go. Do you see why he was so eager all of a sudden? So yeah, okay. So jumping back to where we were kind of talking about, they've come back now. The transceiver's not working. So now we see Saeed coming in to, hey, I can probably fix it. Of course, we have blonde-haired guy. We're saying names, right? We've already ruined that. His name is Sawyer for those.
Okay.
Sawyer is, he's, of course you're going to fix it because they've obviously just had this massive fight. But he walks off and Hurley, of course, follows him and sits down. They kind of have a bonding moment. But that's when we find out that Saeed has been in the Republican Guard, and Hurley's face. It's probably one of my favorite things where he's like, okay, I'm not going to ask any more questions to learn about people, which was great. So with that, I mean, now we're getting into this transceiver is kind of the main focus of this part of the pilot because they need to send out a signal. So we've got Saeed working on that. We've got, of course, Shannon and Boone. They're having their, things. We've mentioned that Jen was working on things, but we hear from Claire that she hasn't felt the baby move. So now we're starting to dive into a little bit more of these characters and like how they're feeling sitting here now a day and a half in of this plane crash. So Jack is obviously working on a guy with a piece of shrapnel. We don't get much from him until the second part. But Jack is, I was hoping he'd be rescued. Now I have to perform surgery on an island with literally nothing. And while that's happening, then we have a whole nother group that's about to go take off to try and get this transceiver to work. So Jake, walking us into kind of all, because there's so many things happening at this point, walk us through what your first reactions were with Shrapnel Dude, new group. Walk us through it.
Well, so clearly Shrapnel Dude has something to do with Kate. We don't really know the specifics currently of what was actually going on. But there's something happening there. I don't know if it's like a legal thing or I'm not quite sure. So I'm interested.
She was in handcuffs. So.
Oh, she was in hand. Okay, I didn't.
Oh, did you not catch that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So she
didn't
had
catch that when she was on the flashback or whatever.
Yeah, well, because I was thinking the handcuffs were Sawyer's, right? Because that was revealed later on, or earlier on, because this was like the end of the episode was we found out about Shrapnel Dude. But yeah, and then we find out like obviously he gets, the shrapnel impales him. He gets hit in the head with some like, so that happens. So that was interesting to me. I'm interested to know more about that. And then the other group going off and trying to figure out the transceiver. And then Sawyer shoots a bear. And so there's the badass moment right there. And it's a polar bear, which which shouldn't be there. So that kind of reinforces the theory that it is some sort of experiment and random stuff is kind of getting put here is what I'm thinking, but I'm probably very wrong and there's some other weird explanation.
Yeah, so I mean, this group takes off. We've got a very weird grouping of people here. We've got Shannon and Boone, and of course, they're constant arguing. Shannon wants to go because he tells her she's being useless, which she is. So they go off. You've got Kate and Saeed and Charlie, and then out of nowhere, Sawyer pops up, and then yes, they run into and then of course Shannon's annoying screams because she has to scream literally every episode. And then we find out that he is shooting a polar bear. We're asking what's going on with the gun. We're finding out there's a U.S. Marshal. Now people are starting to realize that there's more going on. There's somebody that was a U.S. Marshal was taking. Of course, they're thinking it's Sawyer. But that's where we get then Kate's somewhat flashback of where we get the shrapnel dude
Yeah.
and kind of what was happening there. Michael, Greg, any thoughts on kind of that situation moving in there?
It has my favorite quote, maybe my favorite quote in the history of the show. It's certainly one of them, where after Sawyer shoots the polar bear, and I think Charlie says, "Where did it come from?" He's like, "How should I know? Bear Village."
This is where, this is like with Greg saying that Sawyer, this is where I fall in love with Sawyer, and Sawyer stays at the top of my list probably for a good long time, if not the entire series. But Sawyer's got just these one-liners that just hit you every time, and you mentioned earlier, I shot a bear, so it's just I love Sawyer in these moments. This is kind of where I really fell in love with him, is just that whole interaction there with the polar bear.
Yeah. He really is the king of the one-liners through this show. It's great.
Yeah. I'm interested to learn more about him despite me not liking him these first couple episodes, but I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that everybody is like a double-edged sword where they have unlikable moments, it seems like, and then you can still have them be redeemable in some sense. So
yeah, for sure. All right, so now we're getting to the very end. This is the big moment. They've now made it to high ground, and they turn the receiver on. They find out that there is something that's being played. We're finding out that it's on a loop. It's a French woman talking, and of course, Shannon now has a purpose. She speaks French. As you guys can tell, I am not a Shannon fan, but Shannon is now trying to listen. They're all arguing, of course, because battery's dying just miraculously after it was fine 5 seconds ago. But it kind of turns into a moment of we got to figure out what this lady's saying. We got to figure out how long this has been on a loop. And then we find out that it's been playing for 16 years. And the French woman is saying, they're all dead. Please help me. Come get me. And they're kind of realizing, Charlie says it perfectly, where we end the episode is, where are we?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of where, boo, and Lost pops up, So, I mean, I think that this is a huge moment of, you're now realizing, okay, we have something that's been playing, because they even bring it up too. Well, if she was rescued, then why is it still playing? So now it's was she rescued? Is she still on this island? There's so many questions that are popping up. So I don't know, Jake, for you, what were your thoughts running in your head at that moment?
Yeah, I mean, again, simulation perhaps, but I don't know. I just don't know what to think about how this has happened before, and it's been 16 years, and so I'm just curious about where it's going to go from here. I'm definitely intrigued at this point. You guys have gotten me interested, so.
Also, on the whole, where are we thing, we also, jumping back a little bit, we learned from the pilot that the plane went off course and they lost their navigation, and they were 1,000 miles off course when the plane crashed. So nobody knows where they are. So yeah, it's a bad situation for our little gang.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on one thing that you skipped on the voice, the French voice, Jake. When it says it killed them all, what do you think?
Ooh. Well, it's probably referring to the creature or something of it killed everyone else that was there before, so that's probably where I'm leaning, but it could actually mean something else entirely. So
Yeah. It's definitely like Michael said it best earlier is you get kind of an answer to a question and you get 10 more to pop up in it.
yeah.
So it's a great way, especially I think that this pilot part 1 and part 2 was a way like Jake, you're sucked in, all of us were sucked in immediately because now where I brought up before, it's where you're gonna be like, I don't want to stop watching. I want to find out what's gonna happen next. So excited for this for the series to continue and really dive deep into what's held my heart for 20 years.
Yeah.
And as much as you might want to keep watching Jake, we're having this wonderful experience doing it on the podcast. So you're going to have to be patient
Yeah.
and watch it with us.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, I have other stuff to watch at the same time, luckily. So I can definitely be patient with this. And I'm excited to watch it with you guys and get some of my questions answered.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, where do you rate the pilot 1 and 2 of Lost, or on a series level?
Probably at least an 8. I mean, they're pretty solid pilots. I mean, like probably one of the better pilots for a show that I've seen, to be honest. And I assume it's gonna get better. So I think an 8 is a good estimate where it can absolutely get better. But this was pretty solid. So
Yeah, agree. Michael, Greg, do you feel like when you were watching or even just rewatching it now, just without putting all of the stuff that we know out of our brain, where would you have rated the pilot?
I give it a 10.
Yeah.
It is the best pilot I have ever seen. It instantly grabs you and pulls you into the show and makes you want to watch the next episode.
Yeah.
I agree. I honestly think it's a perfect pilot. They absolutely smash it out of the park with the intrigue, the production of it, the performances in it are fantastic. Yeah, it's such a good 90 minutes of television that flies by in a heartbeat.
Yeah. No, I mean, even just us sitting here talking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like we're already at the end of that episode. Because it's just there's so much in there, but it really gets you sucked in, like we've said several times, and where you just want to keep watching because you want to find out what's going to happen next. So I agree with that. So I don't know if you guys want to add anything else, but I think that we have set the precedent for how Lost is going to go. We've got an amazing series and watching Jake's throughout the entire thing.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see how it goes. I like that there's people, I guess, that I am aware of or that I know that are involved with this. I mean, we already said Evangeline Lilly. I know of John Locke and Hurley in pop culture, at least. And then Michael Giacchino doing the composing for the music, and then J.J. Abrams directing at least the pilot episodes. So I at least am aware of people that are involved in this show. So
I'm so glad you brought up Michael Giacchino because the score for this series is my all-time favorite for any show I've ever watched. It's such a character in itself, and the music of this show is so good.
It's like the heart of the show, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, every like little piece that you get, like when they're just, I mean, there were several times where, we were able to like throw in a line or whatever we wanted to say, but just even like for a perfect example, Kate just kind of washing everything off and she's sitting there and just that music that's over her as she's standing in the ocean. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Intrigued. So ready for more whenever our next episode is. But if you guys have anything else, I'll end this portion and then obviously stay around for these three to do spoiler talk without me, which is going to be interesting. The After Jake podcast. So
after Jake.
After Jack.
After Jack.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything
Perfect.
else?
Nope.
All right. Well, with that, we will see you all next time for more Lost on the Tribe of Nerds.
All right, here we are, the Losties, here for the spoiler section. So if you are a first time watcher of Lost, get it off. Go back. Don't do this. Just here's your time. I'm pausing. All right, I've given you plenty of time. All right, you should be gone. All right. With that, we are kind of going to go through things that we know because we've watched the series several times, so things that we cannot bring up with Jake around. And so with that, this kind of spoiler section is going to be a lot of fun because this is where I want to bring it a lot of stuff. I know you guys do too. But also if you are listening on Spotify, make sure you watch the video part because like look at our beautiful faces. You don't want to miss this. So go to the YouTube channel, Tribe of Nerds. All right, let's jump in here, guys. Michael, you want to kick it off or Greg?
Well, I mean, the entire show is this plane crash of our candidates being brought to the island by our bit of a dick deity, Jacob. So this is knowing how this all comes together and
Yeah.
having Jacob and the Man in Black in the background, and we'll talk a lot about Jacob, but fuck Jacob, quite frankly. Ruin these people's lives.
Ruin
So
these
many people
people's-
died.
Yes.
Could you not have made it so the plane just landed?
Right.
Could you
Right.
brought them
Right.
safely?
For sure. One of the things I want to bring up too, because this is one thing that I don't know if you guys have ever questioned or noticed, but this is one thing that's been bothering me for years of watching Lost, is so we know that the back side of the plane has broken off. We know that they are going to be the tailies that we will learn about. And then we have the cockpit part but there's a good section of seats there, and we only see a couple people dead. Where are all the people that were sitting up there?
And they never go back to the cockpit.
Right.
I hate that.
They do.
They do once, but
Once, yeah.
it's not enough for it. They could have used the cockpit. They stripped every other part of the plane.
Right,
Yeah,
but
true.
I mean, I just am like, where are these people at? Like, where are they all at?
I can suspend my disbelief that the front part of the plane is relatively small. I think if that breaks off in midair, you're getting yoinked out the back of that thing. I think they probably got sucked into the ether.
I mean, possibly. I don't know. I mean, because when they first approach the cockpit, it's a good. Also, this is probably my one thing with Lost that I will say is that all these sections that we're seeing, they're like massive. So like, is this plane forever long? It's kind of, it makes me
Big
laugh.
old plane.
Yeah, but I mean, they're walking, like when they're climbing up to get to the cockpit, they're going through several rows of seats there, and you literally only see 2 to 3 people sitting in the seats. So, I mean, that's definitely an idea for sure. We saw people got sucked out when, in the flashback and whatnot, but that's always bugged me. I'm like, where are all the people?
I don't even remember them going back there to get luggage out.
Right. What are you doing?
That would have been first class luggage as well, so they would have had the
Right.
good stuff.
Good stuff. That's probably where all the antibiotics are, Jack.
That's where the Jack Daniels is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, like going into this kind of might be a little bit sporadic for us, but I know that there's a lot of things that we know. But I mean, shrapnel, dude, like we love this. I mean, I can't wait for Jake to see the story of because that they have a history. It's not just shrapnel, dude. It's not just some U.S. Marshal that grabbed her. There's a history here for him.
Yeah.
Kate.
And how different would the show have been if he didn't get shrapnel in his chest and a big old box on the head? That would have been an interesting relationship to see develop on the island, as we know. Shrapnel guy's not going to make it. I can't remember his name. Edward Mars. There we go.
I always just call him shrapnel. He's literally been shrapnel, dude, for. But yeah, no, I mean it's crazy. I mean, because we know coming up in this next couple, and next 2 episodes here, he's gonna start giving a little bit, but we never get the full thing, and so it would have been for sure very interesting to see if he would have been able to give more. But I like that he did not, so that we kind of got to know Kate in different ways.
Are we going to talk about stuff that we noticed for the first time as well this time?
Sure.
Go for it, Greg.
Because like I was telling Michael, I had done a little bit of research on Lost just to like freshen up, and I found out that the sound for the smoke monster is a taxi cab receipt printer. And Rose is sitting there after she hears it, and she's like, "That sounds familiar." It's a callback to her being from the Bronx or Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, she said it in the episode?
she did.
Yeah.
Okay, now see, this is why I love Lost though too. We've watched this a million times. I just watched it with you guys and I did not hear that part and I've never heard it. So
She's just like, "That sounds familiar."
interesting.
Like the little like
Click,
clicking that it does. Yeah, it's like a taxi cab receipt thing from New York.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, it's like Rose is like, oh, this is familiar. I think it's probably just like a fun little reference to where they got the noises from it. So they had a character from New York say that. But yeah, that was one of the very like long running questions regarding Rose for the rest of the show. Was like, why does she recognize the monster?
Yeah. I think too, I mean, also knowing what's gonna happen, Rose is gonna become a bigger character here. I think it's crazy to see like watching back as she's so just like, you know, okay, he saved her on the beach, you know what I mean? And for her story to come together, of course, we know that the tailies become part of Rose's story as well for certain reasons, so we won't go too spoiling because those are episodes later on, but I love that Rose kind of becomes a bigger character than what you initially thought she would be.
Yeah, I mean, her husband picked a terrible time to go to the bathroom.
Poor husband.
The tailies had it rough
They sure did.
compared to our group.
Yeah, they sure did. Anything from the first episode? I mean, I know we talked about it already on the podcast with Jake about the pilot. That was supposed to be Jack's character. But anything that you guys felt like because I know that for me, go ahead, Michael. I saw you starting to say something.
I just thought that I mean this is the biggest spoiler I could possibly give. So if by some chance you forgot to click off, now would be the time. You you know we open this show with Jack's eye opening, and the full circle nature of the show is ultimately how we are also going to end the show. And I think I just love that opening striking image of Jack's eyes closed and the journey that Jack goes on throughout this series is like I really didn't appreciate Jack too much as a character in my first couple of watches, and every time I've watched the show, Jack has become more and more of a fan favorite character of mine because of the journey that he goes on. You know, man of science to man of faith to ultimately, you know, his relationship with Locke and becoming briefly protected to save the island and closing his eye at the end and having saved his friends and the island. So it's really the beginning of that amazing journey that we're going to go on these 126 episodes or whatever it is with Jack.
Yeah, well, you weren't kidding when you said you were going to spoil it. So I hope whoever was not like, I hope you all turned that off.
We gave fair warning.
I know, Greg, you brought up too, and I think these are fun things that, you know, because we've seen it. Like you brought up Jack bringing up to Kate when she's sewing him up about that story about him. We obviously learn, you know, his story later on, and we get to know that we get to see that surgery. We get to see all these moments. And I think that that's a fun thing that they've brought in. I know you were going to bring up some other things, Greg, so go bring them up.
For that one, I just wanted to say that instant connection between Jack and Kate kind of like set the tone for that relationship for the rest of the show, I feel like. And it's great because it's completely different from her and Sawyer. Her and Sawyer, they're at each other's throats, they don't like each other. And it's just great to have different variety. And then you had asked about the captain or the pilot. I just noticed on this run that the smoke monster killed him because he wasn't a candidate because Lapidus was supposed to be the pilot. I don't know how I've missed that every other time until this time, but I did.
Yeah. Also, I mean, for people that were watching, if like I know that these things were easily missed, and this is kind of like with her grabbing the wings there, but in the water. And so I know obviously some people have seen it, obviously that's why she looks up, but a lot of people miss that the reason why she's looking up into the trees to find the pilot is because she saw the reflection of him in the trees in the water. So I mean, those are things that like little things that people might miss, but I mean, if you miss that, like what were you watching? Were you like fixated on something else?
Yeah.
The wings.
The wings.
Yeah, and also on Jack and Kate and that story that he tells her about that the young woman he saves with the angel hair pasta that always kind of stuck with me. It's going to be another big moment in season 3 where he asks her to repeat that story, and that it's there's so many little moments like that I just love in Lost that are planted very early and they may pay off several seasons later. And um, yeah, I just think the way that Lost tells its story is so satisfying, and anyone that thinks that it's not satisfying, I don't think is paying attention.
I agree. I agree. I mean, but even too, bringing that up too, like we saw that later on in the part 1 where they're running from the monster and she's counting because she remembers
Yeah.
that too. So it's again like those attention to details that Lost really does well, that work and make the show, I think, amazing. Any other like quick spoilers that we wanted to talk about in part 1 or part 2 that we feel like you were dying to talk about, but Jake was here and you couldn't talk about it?
I have one that's quite a big one.
You
We
gonna
get the
spoil the whole
scene.
show again? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's the spoiler section, Kristen.
I
Um,
just giving you crap.
we get the scene with John Locke and Walt on the beach where he explains the game of backgammon and holds up the two sides. One is light, one is dark, and I just think it's so cool that in episode 1 of this show, not just any character, but maybe the key character to explain that in everything that Locke is going to be involved in later, not so Locke, with the two sides of duality on this show with Jacob and the Man in Black, and the inside joke between them. We see those rocks later come up in a cave. So I just think it's a really nice thing to have in the pilot episode that is ultimately going to be a big part of our end game.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think again, I keep saying it's the attention to details. You know what I mean? It's just like something that's so we're to anybody else, he's just explaining backgammon. But for us that have seen it already, we know that is the massive part. You know, you're like, ah. I know. I'm like, oh, Jake, why are you here? No, I'm just kidding.
Jake, though, can we talk about the fact that he was almost spot on everything, but is so far away from everything at the same time, and it's just gonna get better watching throughout the season?
And that's the fun thing about Lost, though, is you're so spot on, and then they're gonna throw something, and you're gonna be like, oh, okay, I'm definitely wrong, but you aren't. You're very close, but then they're gonna throw you way over here to bring you back
red
here.
herrings than Scooby Doo.
Yeah. No, it was fun watching Jake see this. You know, there were when he's like raising eyebrows, like what? You know, moments. It's just fun to watch somebody watch it for the first time and really get into it like we did. I know especially going back to what Michael's bringing up about Locke, he's kind of very like Rose right now. He's not really anything. And I mean, even just in this next 2 episodes, I mean, we get Walkabout, which is probably one of the best, I think, episodes of Lost. Walkabout has a lot of stuff in there. But those are going to be the next when we're, recapping. So it's crazy to think that Locke for these first 2 episodes is like not anybody really. He's explaining backgammon and that's it, or the orange smile.
The orange lights, yeah. And I really love watching Locke in these first 2 episodes, knowing his backstory. And, you have that moment where he's just sat out in the rain and everyone else is terrified, everyone else is freaking out. And this is like a rebirth for Locke. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to him as he sits out in the rain with his arms spread wide. He's been healed, and it's joyous for Locke, and that's a path that Locke is going to go down that is ultimately quite bad for him. But this is a great moment for John Locke while everyone else is freaking out.
Yeah. Well, and it's also fun. I don't know, too. I mean, I'm sure you guys have noticed this, but like when Jack's pulling the guy out with the leg, Locke is one of those people that comes and helps him. We find out later, because you get Locke's backstory and stuff. But also, like in the interaction with Jack and Rose, you see Locke literally sitting right behind her. So it's just kind of, again, all these connections that these characters have that we just don't know yet. And I can't, that's probably my favorite part, that I'm excited to see Jake realize that they all are really, really connected. I mean, there's some that are connected more so than others, which we'll get into later, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you guys feel like we should add before we end spoiler session 1?
Okay, I'm good.
I would just like to say thank you and namaste.
Namaste. We're gonna need to watch that again. No, I mean, you guys, I was dying, and Jake's just sitting there, like, you're like, I think this is my 108th watch, and like, Jake's just sitting, and then Gregg's like, we're gonna need to watch that again. I'm like, yes, we do. Yes, we do. And all these things Jake has no idea about. So, with that, we'll end that. If you enjoy the spoiler section, definitely we will have it after every episode that we air, just to kind of talk about those things that were in the episode that we know happen later on. So stick with us. The lost is going to be not so lost. It's going to be found.
Yes.
All right. With that, I am ending the recording. If I remember how to do that, here we go. And I love that that's going to be in there because he can't do anything. Okay, bye.